So guys, it's a special occasion. 13 years ago today, I asked my childhood sweetheart, my best friend, and the most beautiful woman in the world to marry me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks. All three said no, but thanks. All right, so before we start, you're listening to Security This Week, by the way. I'm Carl, and that's Dwayne and Patrick. Patrick is actually in an undisclosed location where it is now 10 p.m. and people are sleeping, so he's going to be talking very quietly.
They're going to think I'm in Ukraine.
I know, right? Right.
Well, do you want to say where you are?
I'm actually in the Kursk region of Russia. No, I'm just kidding.
You are not.
I'm just kidding.
I got to be really quiet. You'll hear me coming.
No. All right. So Patrick's visiting relatives, and as I said, everybody's sleeping, so he's got to be quiet. But we're going to boost his level, so he's on par with the rest of us. Okay, let's get started. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stories. Who wants the first one? Acronis cyber infrastructure bug actively exploited in the wild.
Yeah, absolutely. So Acronis, do you guys remember Acronis?
Yeah, I do.
You ever use Acronis?
Kind of. Was it like a backup thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a big backup utility back in the day. There was net backup and all sorts of utilities out there, and Acronis is one of them.
When you first joined the company, weren't we using Acronis?
We were.
And I made you do the backups.
23 years ago, folks, when Patrick hired me, I was doing backups for him.
Yep.
With Acronis.
That's how I broke in the new guys.
And then he hacked the backups, and you said, "Whoa, you can do that?" And he said, "That's not all I can do."
He told me what my password was.
Oddly enough, those backups were on tape. DAT tapes, my man. DAT tapes.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. That was awesome.
What happened here?
So needless to say, this, if you are running it's a cybersecurity company, according to, the Hacker News, cybersecurity company Acronis is warning that a new patched critical security flaw impacting its cyber infrastructure. So what they call ACI. So if you're running Acronis's ACI, then you are going to need to patch, anything under build 501, 501 to 501 to 561. We'll have this on the site.
Okay.
511 to 5171 and 521 to 5269, 53 to.
Or you could just click the link and go see what they say there.
There's a lot going on there.
Two important things to point out is one is the CVSS score is 9.8.
Wow.
And is that merited? It is a remote code execution, so I guess it is.
Yes. Yeah, and you got to imagine, like, these style of utilities run with unfettered access most of the time. So they're either running as local system, they're running as a domain administrator, they're running as a local administrator. So anytime you can get remote code execution on a running service that's running with super high level privileges, you're going to get something in the nines.
All right, but here's the thing. What is the STW contagion score? 0 to 10. How likely are people to get this?
It's already been added Monday to the known exploited vulnerabilities by the CISA. So CISA's seeing this being used in the wild. So I think it's high.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed. Right. I think that there's the barrier to entry on this one's not super high. So
all right. So it's up there in the nines, probably the same, 9.8, 9.5. All right. Okay. Patchity patch. Next, CISA warns of VMware ESXi bug exploited in ransomware attacks. That sounds familiar.
We talked about this last week, I think. And this is just part of the life cycle is we report that something big has happened. And then CISA says, hey, we're seeing this thing being used. And then it becomes a tool in Dwayne's toolkit.
100%.
Actually, I think the order is off. It becomes in Dwayne's toolkit before CISA warns us.
Scratch that. Reverse it. In case you didn't hear us last week, can we talk about what this bug is?
Yeah, this is a authentication bypass in the hypervisor of VMware, ESXi. So basically, we talked about virtualization and the fact that it's used everywhere. And by having an authentication bypass, this is the one where you just create a group called ESX admins,
right? And
you add the account that you've created to that group or the account that you have access to that account. And then it becomes a god on the system. So not bueno.
No bueno.
No
So
bueno.
now CISA is aware of it because they're seeing it in the wild. So patch, you know.
Yeah. And they're urging agencies to secure their servers against it because, I mean, cloud providers, on-premise provider, almost everything has ESX I somewhere in it. It's very, very popular.
Okay.
I was, by the way, digging into how hard this Acronis thing is. The last story we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And digging into it, security advisory from Acronis says, now listen to this, and we'll gauge what the level is here. Remote code execution is due to the use of a default password.
Oops.
Yeah.
So I think the barrier to entry is really low. If you just find the default password, you get godlike privileges everywhere. So that's nice.
Well, that's if they haven't removed or changed the default password.
Correct. Yes.
And if anyone worth their weight in salt as a security or IT person is going to do that,
Which means 90% won't.
But you would say that it is a finding. I can't say this. It is very common for us in a pen test to find a device or more or all of them that have default passwords.
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Default passwords are everywhere. Yeah. Because there's a lot of things people don't think about with a default password. Cameras. Put a camera up. Cameras have default passwords.
Yeah.
TVs. TVs have default passwords.
You know what people also don't think about? Security. They don't think about it at all.
Especially when they listen to this stupid show.
Actually, I think you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah. It is funny though, because I always feel like a magician. I'm always like, is your password, username admin, password admin? And they go, oh my God, how'd you guess it?
How did you
it's
know
on the
that?
web. Like everybody knows that one.
I own a browser.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to talk about my favorite book when I was a kid. It was called Silly Billy. And I'm not going to talk about it, but if you do know what that book is, that's what we feel like most of the time.
Never heard of it.
When we consulting. Yeah, it's about a kid who does these crazy, silly things, and his parents think he's silly, and he goes out and he finds people stupider than him. Like running into a house with no windows with pans of light, and they don't understand why there's no light inside. That kind of thing.
Wow.
Okay. Let's talk. Are we done with that one? Can we talk about
done. Yeah, we are
Apache?
done.
Yeah, these are quick. The first ones are quick.
All right. So this is from CSOonline.com. New critical Apache OFBiz or OFBiz. I don't know how you say OFBIZ. Vulnerability OFBiz.
I don't know.
Vulnerability patched as older flaw is actively exploited.
ERP. So
this is an enterprise resource planning system. Through Apache. Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. This is a super low barrier to entry. CVSS score of 9.8 out of a maximum of 10.
Wow.
And in the link that we're going to give you from the Hacker News, you actually see them literally running a Python script and just pointing it at the OFBiz server and getting a reverse shell and connecting back to you.
And so this does require that it be out on the internet, but that's pretty much the way this is set up to be. It's meant to be a cloud-based, I think, offering.
But also a default password thing, or
No.
So this actually doesn't end up being a default password, although we see them often. This one ends up being what we look for as pen testers, red teamers, and security researchers. Systems typically are designed okay. Don't want to say good or well,
that's
but
so generous
okay.
of you.
I know, right? Okay is about as high as I can go.
Yeah.
And then what we typically see is where, yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're very mid, as my kids would say. Not high, not low,
not
just
extra.
mid. Yeah, exactly.
Dad, you're so extra.
I know, right?
What the hell are you
apparently
talking
I'm
about?
mid. It's, So what we typically see is the issue between systems or between pieces of code. And in this particular case, this is the same thing where you can manipulate components to call other components, and that's where we find the gaps. Usually in programming is, and we've talked about this before. Take a look at APIs and front-end websites, right? You have authentication on the front end website, etc., and then tons of developers don't actually think about passing those tokens along to the API. Just anybody can call the API.
Yeah.
And this is that style of situation.
Okay. So it's an RCE flaw, as you said, is users are urged to update ASAP.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just another go patch thing.
Go patch.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing about a remote code execution. If you can't access the system, it's not a big deal. But a lot of these systems are meant to be accessed over the web, and that's what makes them a big deal.
Yeah. Yep.
So if you have like an ERP system that's only available after you VPN in or after you use, Zero Trust endpoint in, then you probably don't. It's still a problem, but it's not an urgent problem. But the problem is most of these are hosted somewhere that you can get to through the cloud, and that makes it an inherently like hair on fire problem.
Yeah. Hey, before we go to the next one, it's just happened to me this week that I got a Facebook message from a Facebook friend. Now, this Facebook friend, I don't think I've ever met them in person, but they're kind of in my town and they know friends that I know and that kind of thing. So I got this Facebook message a few days ago. It said, "Hey, can you do me a favor?" And I ignored it. Right.
Yeah. Like one does.
Yeah. And then the next day I got this, and I'll read it verbatim. "I lost my phone and now there's no punctuation at all. I lost my phone and just got a new one and a new number. Also, I was trying to log in my Facebook on my new phone, but they asked me to find a friend to help receive a code. I'm only Messenger right now. Send me your number or Gmail because it's a new phone. Facebook will text you the code and I will text you with my new number after you get the code and send it to me on my new number. Can you do this for me?" And I said, "No." Now, it was probably the friend because this person does text like that and post like that.
You should just tell them that it's just too sketchy for you to do.
I said, "No, I'm afraid I can't help you."
Right?
Yeah.
Because if it is a scam, then they're using your phone number to register stealing that person's Facebook. Yeah, now it'll trace back to you.
Exactly. No, there's no way I'm complicit in any of that. There's a reason why you have two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication.
Oh,
yeah.
And I'm not going to just arbitrarily break it for some...
Can you imagine that you are their closest friend and you barely know them and you've never met them? No.
Yeah.
Maybe they're an introvert. Come on now.
No, they're not.
Maybe they're a Nigerian prince.
Ooh,
nope, not that either.
Yeah, and if it were me and I were looking to sign up for some service, call it, whether it's Gmail, I'm going to send a bunch of spam mail through it, or spear phishing, or whatever it may be, or it's something else where they need a phone number. They're getting really good about finding, we do burner phone numbers all the time, but they're getting really good at finding burner phone numbers. So let's say I wanted to just steal Carl's phone number. The easiest way to do that, register for that service, put in Carl's number. He gets the text with the number and tells me what it is. And now whatever shady service is registered to you might not even be Facebook.
Right.
It might be something entirely random. So
yeah,
you got to be careful there.
Yep. Got to be more careful, people.
We're so proud of you, Carl. We're so proud of you.
I know, right? Yeah. 3 years ago, I would have said, sure.
You fell for that when I did it 3 years ago. I mean, you fell for it.
I at least know better than that. All right. So before we take a break, let's do this last one. This is a National Security Agency cybersecurity advisory, and it's from media.defense.gov. So it looks legit. Who wants to talk about Cisco Smart Install Protocol misuse?
Well, let me just state this, that the Cisco Smart Install Protocol is one of the most convenient things I have ever seen, and that will tell you what I think of it.
What's also awesome is this was released in 2019, so it's been around a while, and we're just seeing it show back up. The NSA is making more noise about this, saying, hey, if you're still running the Cisco Smart Install...
It takes about 6 years.
What's that?
The government gives you a 6-year head start before it says...
well, actually, this is... Okay, there's so many things. First off, this is on the NSA. It's media.defense.gov, but it's from the NSA, and it's a PDF.
Yeah.
Like,
we don't use.
Most people would put this on like a web page of some sort, but the NSA wants you to download a PDF and run it, and I always get a little.
That's really dumb, isn't it? I mean,
they spend so much time on that header. They really want to use the header.
I'm a little worried, but
I mean, PDFs
I don't like opening PDFs anyways.
I know they're so much less secure than a website.
Right.
Why?
Well,
let's
actually,
get everybody used to opening PDFs.
Our next article is going to show why websites are not secure either. But so it's interesting in that exploiting this, where they're starting to see is now if you have a Cisco device that has smart install protocol in use. And that's on port 4786. So if you're looking at your Cisco device and you run show TCP brief all, you should see it actually show up there. To exploit it, what attackers are now doing is they're exploiting these devices and actually pulling the configurations off the Cisco devices. And you go, okay, well, okay, they got my configuration, but usually in those configurations are a lot of really secret passwords for the read-write cache for the particular devices and that sort of stuff. So there's usually pretty sensitive information. But if I were going to attack a network and I wanted to get a piece of malware, or I was going to send a phishing email to that network, and I was going to custom write a piece of code that reaches back out to me, wouldn't it be great if I understood the layout of the network? So this I think the NSA is starting to look at this as exactly like, hey, if this is getting pulled from you, chances are you're on a hit list,
and you wouldn't even know it.
Right? Exactly. Now the NSA will also typically hold on to these things for a couple of years and use them for a little while, and and then when they see other countries figure it out, they go, "Oh, okay, yeah, we should let people know."
Turds in
so
the
that
pool.
might be why it was really. I don't know.
You know that both Dwayne and I have used the expression "meh" a couple of times here, and I just want you guys to know, and all the listeners to know, that is attributed, that little phrase there, MEH, to a Greek philosopher.
Get out.
Yeah, mediocrities. All right, we're going to take
that was his phrase.
Meh. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages. And we're back. You're listening to Security This Week. Meh. I'm Carl Franklin. It's Dwayne LaFlotte and Patrick Hines. Patrick is, of course, speaking quietly because he doesn't want to wake everybody in the house.
He's in a skiff.
I don't want to wake up the troops in the other bunker.
Release the Kraken.
So this next issue it has been aged like a fine whiskey. It is
18 years.
18-year-old security flaw in Firefox and Chrome exploited in attacks.
Oh my God. I can't.
And it's a 0 day. So this goes to show that a 0 day is just something that's not disclosed. It's not well known. It could be known to some actors. It could be known to some countries.
It's not
but
public, though.
It's not public yet. So you can have an 18-year-old 0 day.
But okay, so if it's in Chrome, is it also in Chromium and therefore in Edge as well?
Yes. And what this is, so everybody knows your home computer address, right? Like you have an IP address on your computer, just like a street address of your house.
Yep.
And your street address on your house is, whatever, some number in some street, and everybody in the world knows about it. But, for a computer, we don't publish our computers directly onto the internet. That would be completely dangerous.
We used to.
A firewall. We used to. Oh, I remember those days when you were at home and you could just open up your massive laptop and print to a printer at work because there's no firewall. Those were the days.
I had an NT machine plugged directly into a hub that I guess we called them concentrators back then, which was then plugged directly into a T1, which was directly on the internet, and it had a public address. And one day I'm searching through my files and I see a text file called hack. That's when I got hip to, maybe there's a better way.
Wait a second. Oh, back before firewalls. Can you imagine? Yeah. Anyways, so your local computer refers to itself in a different way, and so let's say, for example, you're an ASP.NET developer. You open up Visual Studio, you develop an ASP.NET website, and you want to view it. But you don't want to install IIS and a full-blown web server on your development computer. So what you do is you click play in Visual Studio and it spins up a temporary web server, right?
Yep.
And usually that web server is only listening on the local address, not out to the internet, not even your local.
Your 192.168 or your 10.10 or whatever.
Or sometimes even 127.0.0.1. It's like, listen, only traffic from this computer can see this site. Not even another computer on the network.
Right.
Just this computer can see this website. So 127.0.0.1 is your home address. That's like your computer. Everybody has that as their personal address on their computer.
Yeah. It's not routable.
Now
it's not public.
And it's not routable and it's not public. And you can, if you go to it, you're only going to your own computer.
Right.
What's neat about that is there are multiple ways to reference it. So for example, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but you can say 127.1.
Yeah.
And that is the same address. You can get rid of the two middle zeros. So let's say we had a firewall looking for people trying to hit 127.0.0.1, and instead we put a hack in there that does 127.1. Oh my gosh, we just bypassed the firewall, and we can now see everything on this local computer.
So it's kind of like if you had somebody who was told not to let anybody in looking for Patrick, but if they come and say, is Pat here? And they say, yeah, and they let him in.
Yeah, exactly.
Shapiro, and Shapiro. I want to speak to Mr. Shapiro. Oh, he's busy. Okay, let me speak to Mr. Shapiro. No, he's at lunch. All right, then let me speak to Mr. Shapiro. I'm sorry, he's on vacation. Okay, then let me speak to Mr. Shapiro. Speaking.
Exactly. Like that. Now, there are many ways for you to reference.
Wait. First of all, wouldn't the smart configurator of this say 127 dot anything with a mask is out? You know, filter out 127 dot anything.
You should be a programmer.
You would think that, Carl. But what's that? I know, right?
You should be a programmer.
But there are other ways to represent. I can actually represent 127.0.0.1 completely in hex, so it actually doesn't say 127 at all. So there are different ways to reference my local address.
You are so tricky.
So there is one that is supported by Mac and Linux, which is 0.0.0.0, which is usually all addresses. But on a Mac and a Linux, it means the local address. It's the same as 127.0.0.1.
And they missed it.
And it was, there was a researcher who told the world about it many, many years ago, and everybody was like, it's not a big deal, dude.
Yeah.
Right? It's just local stuff. Who cares?
Nobody runs Linux or Mac anyway.
But the problem is...
18 years ago, that was actually true.
Hate mail.
That was actually true 18 years ago.
Well, for Linux anyway.
Yeah, and oddly, I use Linux way more than anything else. But but
you and Miguel de Acaza.
Yeah, right. So the problem here is, let's say I were to have a JavaScript that loads with a web page, and it references 127.0.0.1 and a different port on my computer. I'm running a Docker. I'm running whatever, right? I'm running something, or I'm running that IIS server that's only listening to the local address. Now I could push a configuration down. I could add a user. There are all sorts of admin panels on websites that only listen to the local address. Well, on Linux and Mac computers, 0.0.0 references the local computer and bypasses what they call the private network access restriction. So it actually allows you to call it. Windows, however, has had this block for a long time. So the whole point of this long diatribe is Windows is more secure.
Wow. We've waited 25 years to say those words.
To Dwayne at...
I know, right? PulsarSecurity.com. Honestly, the whole point of this is just be careful if you're running Mac or you're running Linux. If you're not expecting an email from somebody, you should always be careful.
Right.
But in this particular instance, now that this has been announced, they've seen usage of the 0.0.0 addresses spike in emails and spam and that sort of stuff. What they're looking for is you to click on the link. It will reference a local service you're running. Like right now, they're targeting AI services. But there's all sorts of services they could target locally, so you want to be careful with that.
I would ask Dwayne if he's used this week, but I don't want to know the answer.
Didn't I just tell you there's been a spike recently of this being
That was
used?
me. So the long and short of it is, you're running Linux or Mac, make sure you upgrade to the latest Chrome or Firefox.
Yep, absolutely. So Chrome has decided to take action. They are going to block 0.0.0. It's going to be a gradual rollout. So as updates come for Chrome, update them. Firefox doesn't actually implement the private network addressing, but they do have a temporary fix for that. That's going to be in the link in the article. And Apple Safari has already started talking about how they're going to implement it. So just see updates.
Is the workaround that they're going to ask hackers not to touch it?
That's probably it. Yeah, like, hey, can you guys just slow roll this for a little while?
Hey, be cool. Be cool.
Be cool, man. Be cool.
Be cool, honey bunny.
Okay, should we move on?
Yes.
Hacker news. Windows downgrade attack risks exposing patched systems to old vulnerabilities. This is old home week here. 18 years old.
Right.
Default passwords.
There's no school like the old school.
Yeah. All right. So who wants this one?
I'll take this one. So this one is interesting. We talked about Acronis. We talked about backups. We talked about how backups really have access to everything.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular case, there's not a lot of details out on this yet. However, there is an ability for you. Imagine if you could, as a normal user, request a restore of files. And those files included things like NTOS kernel and NTDLL, and I restored them back to an older version that was exploitable by, Print Nightmare or Spoolful or any of the potatoes, anything. Right? Yeah, any of those things.
I would think in that particular case that Windows wouldn't boot because it would realize that it's an older DLL, blah, blah, blah. Maybe there was a mismatch of interface or something.
So there is a way that a researcher
I'm
has shown.
very hopeful, aren't I?
You are very hopeful. There is a way that a researcher has shown where you can weaponize these restores and allow the system to still boot, but get them to be vulnerable to older, already patched things. But what's great is this researcher also wrote a utility called Windows Downdate instead of Windows Update that will tell the system it is fully patched, so it doesn't go out and actually patch. So that it stays in this allowing 0 days state forever. Which is
something
nice.
Must be done about these people, Dwayne. Where are they? Who are these
become
people?
Our leaders.
Yeah, right. So
I want to give them a knuckle sandwich.
This sounds a little bit scarier than it is because it does require a privileged user to okay the process. There are ways around that. There are lots of privilege escalations on Windows and that sort of stuff. I get that. But just be careful. Here again, this is if you're running, even if you're running home systems or more corporate network stuff and you get some sort of weird request to do a restore, be careful what might be in there. There might be some hidden DLLs that are going to restore to places that allow for compromise.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the clickbait story. No, it's not really a clickbait story, but we think it's an interesting story.
Definitely.
Ronin Network, a legitimate organization, was hacked by a white hat group, and I guess they don't know who they are yet, but you can tell me. And then they returned $12 million that they stole.
You're really not white hat if you steal.
And then they got a $500,000 bounty for returning the money that they stole. What?
So I'm not up to date on this, but I have to imagine they found the problem, couldn't get traction in telling the vendor that they had a problem, and then they decided to show them that they had the problem.
Yeah.
All right. So let's dig into this issue though. So this is the gambling blockchain Ronin Network. So it's blockchain, cryptocurrency, etc. Where they're gambling, right? And
so we know they're smug, rich millennials anyway.
But what they did is so the way that the crypto networks work, not to like have everybody go glossy-eyed, you don't just make a transaction. There's a lot of node computers, whether it's bridges or whatever it is, that have to vote and say, yes, this is a valid transaction. And sometimes they do that with mathematics, and sometimes they do that with certain types of transaction logs and whatever. Different networks do different things. This particular update messed up the number of votes required to the point where the hackers could come in and say, oh, you don't need any votes. And they were like, all right, here's $12 million. Right.
Oh, wow.
This same crypto gambling blockchain lost, what was it, $625 million in March of 2022 to the North Korean group Lazarus, and they did.
And I'm imagining they did not give it back.
No, weird, right?
Yeah.
Oddly, that was a social engineering job. They actually faked a job interview to get access to the servers. But anyways, needless to say, we've seen this type of thing before. I don't know the story yet. It was just released yesterday. But the white hat hackers, all we know is white hat hackers, in quotes, so we don't know who they are, broke in and into one of the bridges and was able to steal $12 million worth of currency
Ethereum,
from Ronin Network.
Mostly Ethereum.
And then they gave it all back and got $500,000. Those are the facts. However, we've seen those facts before. Do you guys remember where?
No.
I'll remind you. So Uber got broken into. Uber, then their CTO paid the hackers as researchers and said, hey, I'll give you money, but make sure that none of the data makes it out. So they hacked them first with no contract. The CTO tried to cover it up by saying, no, they were researchers for us.
That was intentional.
And now I think he's in jail.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's the case here, but first off, if you're trying to cover up a hack by paying the people and saying they're a researcher, that's always shady.
Yeah.
Secondly, if you're these white hat hackers, if you steal things, Patrick's right, that you're not a white hat hacker anymore. Yeah. It's great that you give it back,
you're a
I suppose,
criminal
but
with
there are
a
better
different
ways.
Incentive scheme.
Yeah. And this is one of the reasons there's responsible disclosure. So you disclose a bug like this to a company like Ronin Networks, and they typically have 90 days without responding, and you can then release publish the exploit, right? So that gives them at least 3 months to fix it. And usually it's longer than that because they may come back and say, hey, we need 6 months or 9 months or whatever it is. Please hold on to this and we'll pay you a bounty. And that's fine. But you didn't steal anything. You responsibly disclosed to them what the issue was and they offered up a bounty. And that's fantastic. But taking $12 million and then giving it back for, I don't know, there's something weird and sketchy about this, and I'm sure we'll hear over the next couple of weeks.
I mean, the only more innocent explanation is they contacted them and they said, we don't believe you. Do it. If you do it, we'll give you a $500,000 bonus.
It's possible.
And then they did it. Which...
Yeah, absolutely. It's possible that...
Is that speculation, though?
It's total speculation.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, but it's entirely possible that this article is hyping it up. Oh my God, they stole it. They got it back, whatever. And maybe it was, okay, demo it to us. And they stole $12 million and are like, oh, look, it just transferred to our account. And they were like, all right, cool. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Send it back.
Send it back. Right. So it's entirely possible that's what happened. And if it did, fantastic. Great on them. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens when more of this comes out.
Well, before we go, I want to mention a podcast I was listening to that I think our listeners would like. It's the Moth Radio Hour, which is just a great podcast of storytellers with no script getting up in front of an audience and telling a story. And the topic here was confidence game. And this is the blurb here. Hold on to your wallets, SSNs, and test papers. This episode is all about scams, schemes, and con artists, student hijinks, famous grifts, monkey business, and the word of God. This episode is hosted by Jay Allison, producer of the radio show. So I was like, it was a driveway moment for me. Like I had to stop and listen to the rest of the stories before I could turn off the car and come into the house. So there you go. Just wherever you get your podcasts, look for the Moth Radio Hour. And August 6th, it was published Confidence Game.
Oh, I definitely am going to check that out.
Yeah. And other than that, we'll see you next week on Security This Week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.